Holy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that point about Visa and Mastercard being successful businesses, I think you figured it out, haven't you? I mean, what's your profit margin, Ms. Kirkpatrick?
It's circa 50%.
Mr. Sheedy?
Slightly higher.
It's higher than 50% profit margin?
Slightly higher than Mastercard, yes.
Yeah, that's incredible. 50%.
And just to clarify for the viewers at home,
I mean, that's absolutely.
By profit margin, I believe he's referring to net income specifically, because there's a lot of different definitions of profit margin, which is your profit margin after all expenses, interest, and tax are paid out. So I believe Visa's in 2023 revenue was about $32 billion, and depending if you look at GAAP or non-GAAP, their net income was about 17 or 18 billion, which is an astronomical amount of money. I mean, to be generating that kind of profit is absolutely insane. There are very few companies that do that or do better. So just wanted to clarify what margin we're talking about here.
Absolutely unbelievable. What's the answer to the Walmart question, by the way, that Senator Welch posed to you? What's Walmart's interchange fee that you negotiate with them?
I don't have it with me today.
You don't have any idea whatsoever? Is it higher or lower than 2.5%?
Walmart negotiates their rates based on the business that they do with us.
Meaning they're big, they're really big, they're gigantic, so they get a better deal than Mr. Callahan or most small businesses in Missouri. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, Senator, we have volume discounts that we offer to some merchants. I suspect Walmart.
I like how he basically just says yes, but he has to put a pretty word on it, so he's not just directly saying yes.
Yeah, that's how these things always kind of go.
Yeah.
I will also say about Senator Hawley, I don't know if he not knocking dip, but his face looks like he perpetually has dip in his mouth.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that.
Well, I was going with
like he always looks like he's puffing out his cheeks.
With the start of this video, he looked like he just did a line of pre-workout like right before this, because he looks ready to jump on these people. He just looks excited. He's like,
yeah. He I will say every clip I have seen of him, he is a very clear and articulate speaker. So gotta give him props for that.
Oh yeah.
Don't believe that it's commercially unreasonable to get an arrangement where, in exchange for more volume, a merchant can qualify for lower rates?
Well, I'm sure it's not commercially unreasonable for Walmart, or certainly it's in their financial interest and in yours, but I doubt it's in Mr. Callahan's financial interest. And my question to you, Mr. Callahan, is when you've got Walmart and other major competitors getting charged much less than you are, why in the world would you stick with these guys? I mean, what?
So I understand the point he's trying to get at here, and he is technically correct in that these small businesses generally don't really have a choice in who they choose as a payment processor, because it is a duopoly. He's going to get to the stat in a moment, but MasterCard and Visa have 80% of all payment volume. I think it's worldwide. That said, the practice of giving volume discounts or your biggest customer discounts is a universal practice across every single industry and every single product. So knocking that specific practice, like I understand conceptually that it is unfair. That is literally life, though. Everybody is paying less when you.
I can understand that with a lot of things that involve logistics, Costco wholesale. I can understand that you might have a cheaper fee because there can be other benefits along the way. This is digital. I don't see why it matters if it's wholesale for digital. I don't understand why that would be a thing. That it's literally, oh, hey, you give us more money, so we're just going to give you a cheaper rate. There's nothing along the logistics process that really changes. If anything, they should be charging a higher rate because that might be more strain on their network. So it's actually backwards logic to me. They're literally cutting them a better deal.
Well, no, I mean, that same logic, though, again, applies to any other business, because if I am a company that is manufacturing widgets for Apple, right? I mean, me supplying Apple is going to put more strain on my business I'm going to be producing more. It's going to require me to, there's probably going to have a greater amount of compliance, whatever. So the logic that you just used is also going to apply to pretty much any other industry.
There's still a physical
in
labor
terms of-
demand, though. Like,
So you kind of like,
what?
but you kind of, but by bringing up the network strain, you kind of contradicted your own point, is what I'm trying to say.
No, what?
So if you're
In a
saying
way,
that they're putting a greater strain on their network, therefore they should charge more fees, it contradicts your point that it's digital and doesn't require any effort.
well,
and
what I'm
therefore
saying
they-
is
you know.
it's a very small amount. So for them to be changing rates on a digital thing, when in reality it's virtually doing nothing at all, and I'm just saying, if anything, there would be a slight increase on strain.
But
But
again, if that was true, it would apply even more so for a physical, because the actual strain would be greater in a company manufacturing something physical, because you actually have to transport physical goods. You've got physical labor.
Yeah, but
Therefore, if you were to apply that logic
there's a
to it-
logistics process there, and that's kind of what I'm saying. In that logistics process, wholesale transportation, you may have more opportunities for like, what am I thinking? If you're bringing
generating leverage based on scale.
yes, and so there may be actual.
Yeah, there is leverage scale. Yeah.
So there are, like, if you're bringing a shipment freight over, you don't want to be only bringing over the exact amount of cars that are being bought. You want to maximize that shipment, and sometimes maximizing that shipment of items. If you get a wholesale buyer, it
Yeah.
makes sense to decrease the price because you're trying to maximize the shipment. You're trying to get the quantity there. That argument doesn't apply here. And that's the only argument I can see for
Ultimately-
doing wholesale commercial goods when you have physical products in the chain. I totally get that. I don't see that logic tracking here.
I mean, it kind of does to an extent. So the whole point of volume leverage, which from a producer standpoint is what you're kind of getting at, is you have with any business you've got. I mean, there's different ways to define costs, but classically you have variable costs which change as you do more business. So think of like the cost of packaging or the actual metal that goes into making a car or something, and then you've got the fixed costs, which is the stuff that it is there regardless of how much you produce. Think of rent, maintenance for your
Labor.
equipment, all that crap. So leverage is essentially the idea that your fixed costs, well, production leverage, your fixed costs are the same, and so if you're able to produce and sell more out of that same stuff, the cost allocation across every single widget thing that you are doing decreases, and it makes it more profitable for you, which is what allows for the volume discounts that we discussed previously to be issued, because now instead of taking my $1 million of cost and allocating it over 1 million units, so that fixed cost is $1 a unit, if I can make 2 million units and sell all of those, now it's 50 cents per, right? So I can pass some of that leverage savings onto a consumer.
Right.
Technically, I would imagine that
I don't see any of that here, though.
in theory, you could have some from your network, the cost of your data centers or whatever the hell it is that they use to maintain their network and their servers, which is going to be negligible to the
Yeah,
amount
but
of volume they're doing.
all of that is
but
done.
in theory,
that's,
you could make an argument
that's
of
done through Amazon web hosting, though. That's not even on their side of the network.
I would imagine that Visa has their own.
Pause.
Oh, my
Your
camera
cam.
just disconnected.
Yeah, your cam just turned off. Okay. Yep, you're back to
Sorry
normal.
about that, everyone. Technical issues. Yeah, my camera cut out for a moment, which was a little weird.
Yeah.
I would imagine they have some of their own servers and such that they have. Again, it's probably negligible, but there
might
is
have a
most
ledger.
likely some amount of payment volume over their infrastructure network that is here. But to your point, it is certainly minimal.
Yeah, I
relative
don't.
to people who manufacture fixed goods.
I can't rationalize why they're giving Walmart a discount just because they're a big customer, other than to favor Walmart. That's it. I don't see the logical argument.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably some amount of negotiations related to. I mean, ultimately, any volume discounts are a thing in any industry. It's pretty standard. I don't think there's anything inherently immoral about it. It's just the way the world works, and it's unfair, but it's life, right? I don't know that it necessarily makes sense to do that in a duopoly, but what you gonna do, right?
Well,
So
yeah,
Why is it that
it's
small
unfair
businesses
is my
continue
main
to
point.
use Visa and MasterCard
Like,
yeah, I mean, life's unfair.
when you're getting charged so much more?
It's in my opinion, it's a matter of convenience for the customer, and customers matter to our business.
Maybe is it because that Visa and MasterCard are effectively monopolies? They control 80% of the market?
Certainly part of the
80% of the market? I'm just having a hard time understanding, Mr. Sheedy and Ms. Kirkpatrick, you have a business model. You're making over 50% profit margin. You are able to give the shaft to small businesses. Estimated cost to Missouri businesses from these fees is $1.5 billion. That's with a B, $1 billion a year.
Cool, not a relevant statistic, but out of context, absolutely tells me nothing.
yeah,
I don't know how much revenue that those companies generated. That stat tells me nothing. It's just a big number, right? I mean, you'll see he doesn't actually explain the number further. It's just okay. They paid 1.5 billion. Cool. If they
it was
did 200 billion of revenue,
1.1
which is
billion.
probably a lot, I think it was 1.5.
Why aren't all of these businesses $1 billion a year? Why aren't all of the estimated cost to Missouri businesses from these fees is $1.5 billion?
Yeah, 1.5 billion. Yeah. So I mean, it's a large number, but it's all in the context of how much these businesses are doing in sales. What are the size? He didn't specify. He just said businesses, right?
Yeah, like is Walmart and Target included in that?
I would have to assume they would be, because doing it based off where they're headquartered wouldn't make sense. So you're gonna have a mix of large businesses, small businesses. So that stat is a tad bit not noise.
Yeah, I need more information.
Nonsensical for any. Yeah, that in isolation is not helpful for anything.
That's with a B, $1 billion a year. Why aren't all of these businesses running away from this model? Because they don't have a choice, because you control so much of the market. This is classic monopolistic behavior, and yet your testimony here today is you don't want any competition. You have 80% of the market, but you don't.
Dude, nobody wants competition. That's again. I understand that you're criticizing them in the benefit of the public. No single person is going to say, "Hey, you know what? I've got a great thing going. I make a ton of money.
Right.
I want somebody to come in and ruin that." I'm not saying that with Visa and MasterCard, their situation it's good for the consumer. I'm not saying that it's great and that it's an ideal situation, but that's again the way the world works. If you're sitting at home watching this and you would say you would genuinely say, you know what, if I had a business that was generating 50% margins, I would want the government or somebody to come in and screw that up. Like, no, you would do what you can to defend your position.
So
that's just how it is.
I think the other part here, though, is that I don't know if he mentions it in the video, but part of the video or part of the issue is that the credit card companies are dramatically and rapidly increasing their fees too. So if I'm correct, it was slightly over a 20% jump in 2023 alone. So that's also part of the issue is they can.
I'm not.
They can.
I don't know if that's a true stat or not in terms of the price increases, but yeah, it is a monopoly. It's not good for society as a whole, because it wouldn't surprise me if that's true simply because they can. And what do you can't say shit about it,
Right.
because what are you gonna do?
Yes.
Not accept Visa?
Don't want any more competition. I'm having a hard time finding that position defensible, let alone sympathetic. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of money that you're making. It's unbelievable what you're charging small businesses and consumers, and yet your testimony is, please, we can't possibly have any competition. I mean, let's talk about what you're doing to consumers who hold your cards. Last year, as I understand it, there were 726 million Visa and MasterCard credit cards issued in the United States. That's
Two
about
per person.
for every one person
That's
in the
a
United
lot of
States.
That's
credit cards.
insane.
Do either of you know how much debt is owed on your networks, Ms. Kirkpatrick?
This is irrelevant.
We're not the bank, so we don't have visibility into that information.
And that is
Yeah.
correct. There's a difference between the banks and the payment processors. Visa and MasterCard process payments. They have nothing to do with the rates on the cards or the amount of debt on the cards. They do split transaction fees with the banks, but the actual this question has nothing to do with Visa or
Right.
MasterCard. So even if she does actually know the answer and is just playing dumb, the answer itself is irrelevant unless I'm not really sure what point he's trying to get to here. Other
Yeah.
than credit cards bad and take advantage of people, which is true, but you're going after the wrong pony.
Yes.
We also don't generate revenue from interchange.
Oh, okay. You have no idea, Mr. Sheedy. Do you know?
I don't know.
Well, let me help you out. Let's have a look.
Oh boy.
It's $1.17 trillion.
Also, can we talk about the fact it's 2024 and they're using poster board on a stand? Y'all can't get a screen up there and hook up a laptop or something. to
Yeah.
project? I mean, seriously. I don't know if it's a security concern, but there's no way the people in the audience can see that.
Actually, yeah, that would be a security concern.
$1.17 trillion is what consumers now owe on your credit card.
That has nothing to do with. I mean, they moved the money, dude. This.
So
is,
what about
they don't
serious
hold
question here?
the loans.
Real question here though. I'm just speculating here. Is there anything that I could be missing with owing debt on these cards and in some way making payments on your debt, possibly using other cards owned by Mastercard or Visa? Couldn't that create?
What is going on with my camera?
Yeah, that's a good question.
My camera disconnected again.
Also, by the way,
Okay.
yes.
Tech issue number 2, viewers.
Yeah. Also, yes. According to the Missouri Times, at least in Missouri, credit card swipe fees increased by 20% in 1 year.
But again, that number, this is again back to bad journalism that we talked about in our prior video. That number out of context means nothing because the 23%, that could be as a function of people spending more money because year over year people were not spending as much. That could be because the fees increased. That could be because new business.
That's because of the fee increase. They specify the swipe fee.
Okay, I would need to read the specific article, and if that's true, it wouldn't necessarily be a Missouri-specific thing. It would be a
Right. Oh yeah,
general
just
across the
Missouri.
network
Missouri
thing,
is
most
the one
likely,
that
but-
was pushing the statistics on it.
But your question previously, I'm assuming, was getting at something related to the holding of the debt. I'm assuming you were going to ask something along the lines of the payments related. If people were making service payments on their credit card balances, would Visa or MasterCard
Benefit.
make a cut?
Or-
of
or-
any
or
of
just
that?
any benefit.
Would they benefit from it?
Because at that point, then yes, the debt being held. Now, it's not their fault this debt is held on their cards, but they could be incentivized to help keep the debt going. I don't know what they would do. I don't know what's in their power.
I mean, our
wheelhouse
entire
there.
economy is incentivized.
Yeah.
Our entire economy is incentivized to keep the debt going. That's
Right.
just how, because we live in a debt fuel consumption society. So everyone from the credit card companies to your local toy store is incentivized for people to borrow more money because that's what's essentially been fueling our GDP growth for the past 40 to 50 years.
Yeah.
To answer that your question though, the answer is yes. They could benefit from the payments on loans, depending on the means in which people are making the payments. So if you were making the payment directly from your bank out of your checking, I don't think Visa and MasterCard would get a cut of that. I think if you were to input a debit card into the payment window as you were paying off your credit card bill,
Mm-hmm.
I think because, typically you can directly link to an account, you can select or input card information. So I think if you were to make the payment through a card, then yes, technically they would make money on that. I don't know the composition of paying your debts through card versus paying it through linking it to your bank account. I would imagine most of it
Mm-hmm.
is done via link to the bank account. But if someone in the comments has a different perspective, they can feel free to disagree with me on that one. I don't think it's major, and even if Visa was incentivized, Visa's incentive is more transaction volume, but it's not like they have really much to. They're not out here providing influence on anything. I don't think I've ever seen a Visa advertisement anywhere. They just kind of exist and profit off of the payments process.
Right. Give me 1 second. I am reading something real quick. It looks like a lot of this is in response to in 2022, Visa and Mastercard increased their swipe fees. And it kind of triggered a domino effect of people being like, hey, this is actually getting too high now. God damn, I was just trying to see a freaking number.
What number are you trying to find?
I was actually trying to figure out what number did they increase their swipe fee by? Because I feel like that is significant. That is very relevant.
I would be shocked if that was public. I would be shocked if that was a public number, to be honest.
That's probably why it's so difficult to find.
I would be very surprised.
That's
if
the
they
number
disclosed
one
that.
variable we're missing here. Just give me the freaking numbers. My brain will figure the rest out. Anyway.
Yeah, that would only be available if they disclosed it publicly, which is why I'm skeptical of that Missouri number that you provided, because it would be baffling if they provided that, because that's just literally inviting antitrust up to jump down your throat and be up your ass.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Card networks. Do either of you know what the average interest rate is on your networks?
Another irrelevant question.
Oh, Senator, we're not the bank. We don't set the interchange.
I know,
we don't
but
set
you
the
benefit
rates.
from it, and you know. Do you know what
All
it
right,
is?
so he just said yes, but you benefit from it, which is getting to what I was saying earlier. I would really like him to clarify how he thinks they benefit from this.
I don't know.
I think there's some inner mechanism,
I'm
but
honestly not really
I don't know why
sure.
they're not talking about it.
There might be some interest sharing, right? But
That would be bad. Dude, if there's interest sharing, no, burn it all down. I don't like that at all.
there might, because there might be because they give them, the banks, some of the swipe fees. They might get some, but that would be really shocking to me, truthfully, because a lot of banks don't actually. I don't think a lot of them actually hold the debt. A lot of them end up. Oh, maybe that's other loans. I don't know if they actually repackage credit card loans. Maybe not, because that would be tough to sell as a security. Mortgages you can securitize. I think you can securitize car loans.
Yeah.
Honestly, you can securitize anything, but I don't know. I don't know enough to say he's definitively wrong. So let's see what point
I
he's
just
trying
want
to
more
make here.
information.
Business model.
We
Do you
don't collect
do you know,
revenue
Mr.
from
Mr.
interest
Chidi,
rates.
do you know?
I don't, Senator.
I mean, do either of you read the newspaper? Forbes magazine just estimated last week that the average credit card APR in your networks is 28.75%.
That's the bank.
Average. 29%, let's call it. 29%.
I'm sorry though, but I'm not gonna. It may be unrelated, but 29% is absurd.
It's insane.
That's absolutely insane. I am gonna try to stay as credit card free as possible. Like,
I treat my credit card like a debit card. The second I pay it off like every couple of days.
I
use it just for the points. But I treat it's essentially a debit card for me that I just get rewards on.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It's nearly doubled in the last 4 years. That is astounding. Absolutely astounding. And you just testified a second ago that you've got more than 50% profit margin, and yet your testimony here today is you can't possibly survive if there's any competition. How can...
I like this guy, but what he just said right there actually does not make sense to me. I think I'm missing something, but that doesn't make any sense, what he just said.
Well, so she just testified in front of the Senate, and let's pretend that she is truthful and accurate, that they don't make any revenue. Let's find exactly what she said.
She said they don't
She says
make
that
any.
they don't make money.
They don't
on
collect
interest.
any revenue, or they don't collect any money off of revenue. Which is like, okay, hey,
Wait,
you did.
let's see.
0.75% average. 29%, let's call it. 29%. It's nearly doubled in the last 4 years. That is,
Collect
you know,
revenue
Mr.
from
Mr.
interest
Sheedy,
rate.
do
We
you
don't set the
benefit
rates.
from it, and you know? Do you know what it is? This is
we-
your business model.
We
do you know?
don't collect
Do you know,
revenue
Mr.
from
Mr.
interest
Sheedy,
rates.
do you know?
And she did choose
Okay,
specific
so
words
if that's
there.
yeah, there's a couple of ways you could slice that. Interest rates is technically not the interest payments, so
Right.
sure. That said, it would.
That's still
Let's see, I don't know.
that
He's not really defining.
that was a good answer on her part because she could hide a lot behind that answer. If there was something to hide.
Yeah. Let me see.
We don't collect
Does
revenue
Visa
off interest rates. But like you said, yeah, but payments and rates are two separate words. They might collect revenue off payments.
Yeah, I just checked a couple of sites. They make money by being the middleman in financial transactions, and they do not make money on the interest charged for Visa branded credit card payments, and those fees instead go to the issuing institution. So I am not sure what the point. I am sure what point he is trying to make. I do not think it is correct based on my knowledge of how these two institutions operate.
It's nearly doubled in the last 4 years. That is absolutely testimony here today. Is how can that be true? You've got debt like we've never seen before in American history.
They don't hold the debt. They don't set the rates. They don't make money on the rates. I like what you're trying to do here, but you're barking up the wrong tree, man.
Yes.
Your profit margins are as high or higher than they've ever been. You have 80% of the relevant market in the credit card interchange fees that we're talking about, and yet you couldn't survive if there's any competition? What am I missing? That's not a rhetorical question. How is it that you can't do any better?
Senator, we like competition very much.
No, no, you don't.
So this not as a fault of this. Nobody. Well, people say they like competition. Normally, most people don't.
Not
like
these
competition. They
guys.
like to just win, but not a fault of Senator Hawley, but this clip did start with just kind of him questioning these folks. So I don't know the exact verbiage that MasterCard and Visa used to defend themselves and talk about competition. So it's tough to fully criticize and understand the point that this guy's trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
My colleague from Mastercard mentioned we don't loan money to consumers. That's the job of the banks. I will say, as it relates to small business, we care very much. And the pandemic was difficult on small business more than anyone. In 2022, we lowered rates for 90% of small businesses in the
No, they increased rates in 2022. At least from the articles I read,
I don't know enough to
they
say he's
increased
right or wrong.
their swipe fees in 2022.
I would be pretty shocked if that's true, to be honest. Well, actually, let me think. 2022. So
We're coming out of COVID.
when did the pandemic start? 2020,
Oh,
right?
hey,
So that was
yeah.
the pandemic started in 2020. 2022 January was when Delta variant came out. So this was kind of the tail end. So this was kind of actually that was when inflation started to ramp. So maybe in 2020 that would be too. I would actually be surprised given how rampant. That's 2022 is really when inflation started taking off because they kept the rates too low for too long. And so actually to your point, I would be shocked if what Bill here is saying is true.
United States. I also think that many of the security and the digital features that have been put in the network help small business.
Wait a minute.
during the time.
But wait a minute. My time is almost expired. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But hold on just a second. You've increased the swipe fees consistently in the last few years.
Oh,
You've
okay.
raised them. Even as your network has expanded, even as your profit margins have gone up, you've raised the swipe fees. And in terms of competition, you are paying competitors not to enter the market. The DOJ lawsuit says that you threaten retailers with staggering financial penalties. That's a quote, staggering financial penalties if they use a competitor, and you're paying Apple and Square and others not to compete in your market. You've got 80% market share, and you are paying off would-be competitors not to come into the market while you charge people like Mr. Callahan, who knows how much more than big entities like Walmart. I mean, This is just classic collusive monopoly behavior.
I will agree with that.
And your testimony is you can't accept any more
That-
competition.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I just wish he took the debt stuff out. Get rid of the debt stuff. Leave it, leave the banks out of this. This is keep the beef in Mastercard and Visa's court. You've got a solid case here.
Yeah, it's always, and it's the same thing with the Google case with the DOJ is doing too. It's always frustrating when there is a case to be made, but they bring nonsense into it that is irrelevant, which then undermines the strong and good case in point that they are trying to make.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of this particular segment is. I guess maybe it's to undermine the arguments that Visa and MasterCard made. I wouldn't know unless they listened to the whole two hour or several hour long session. I mean, the point he's making is valid.
Yeah.
I agree with one thing that my colleagues down the dais have said, which is that this is not a sustainable situation. It is not sustainable. This has to change. 1.17 trillion in debt. This has to change. And I'll just end with this, Mr. Chairman. I thought one of the best proposals that the President-elect Trump, made during his last campaign, his most recent campaign, was to cap the interest rates of credit cards. So we could do that.
Wait, what? No, that's
nothing to do with these guys.
No, what? My guy,
that wouldn't affect Visa and MasterCard. They wouldn't care.
I want to reinforce. That's probably why they're being silent, because they're both like, he's chasing the wrong tail right now. Just shut up.
If you want to go after the banks for credit cards, I think both of us would be all for that.
I am 100.
But
yeah, I am 100% for that. Lots of personal reasons there. A few thousands reasons to go after that one. But anyway, dude, he was so close to, he had like a solid landing and then he just flopped at the last second.
I think what they're trying to do, my understanding of this particular proposal, is to incentivize and enable greater competition in the payment processing market, which in theory would allow small businesses to pay lower fees because they would be able to choose lower cost options other than Visa and MasterCard, which would then also force Visa and MasterCard potentially, or incentivize them to lower their fees to be more competitive. And we could get to the place where the US is in a similar spot. I believe Europe's average fee is about 0.3% of revenue compared to the US, whereas I think about 3% of revenue that retailers are paying. So clearly a pretty big gap and a long ways to go.
I like to imagine in the background of this hearing going on, there's some lobbyist for the banks sitting there, seeing the banks catching all this strays, and this lobbyist is just like, all right, when it's our turn, we're just going to blame MasterCard and Visa for everything, because apparently that's what he thinks is going on here. Like they're probably like, this might be good for us, actually. Can we just go up right after these guys, and we're just going to blame them for everything? That's what I would do.
What I want to know and what I want to see is, I've seen a lot of clips of, and I don't follow Senator Hawley closely. I'm not sitting here stalking his Twitter feed or anything. That's what his clips show up on his feed from time to time of him just absolutely ripping into different companies, different sectors, and all of that, which is great. Looks good in a headline, gets people in the comments excited, makes voters think he cares and is pushing these issues, which I'm sure he probably actually does.
Yep.
What I want to know is what actual actions are going to come out of these hearings and these
unfortunately, when only 5
sessions
people
that they're having.
When 5 people show up to the hearing, it doesn't give me much confidence.
Right. So all this smoke and mirrors talk about going at these two companies is great. What is actually going to be passed to benefit the American public? And
what's the date on this video?
Actually take a swipe. The date? The 19th. This is 2 weeks old.
Okay.
19th of November. So it's a pretty recent video.
Yeah.
This is a pretty recent issue.
All right, just making sure. I saw some stuff come out from May of this year saying that some bills are definitely in the works and look like they'll be going through shortly.
First proposal of this, I think, came out last year, if I'm not mistaken. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
2022.
And we'll see.
I think it started up in 2022, at least in the articles I was going through. It might not be official.
Possibly. It might have been brought up in 2022, and actually there might have been a bill in 23. It doesn't really matter. But
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see if there's actually something passed out of all of these hearings and all of the smoke and mirrors and all of the noise that's being had here.